Hey everyone, John here from FlyingHandyman.com, and today we're looking at this beautiful new TV with this super ugly plug hanging down below it. We want to get rid of that, so in the next 10 minutes we're going to take you through exactly how to move that outlet from down there on up here. No drywall, mud, or sanding, or painting, or anything required at all. Let's get to it. Okay, for starters here, what is required to do this? Well, we have 14-2 wire. Now, yes, that's 250 feet. We do not need 250 feet. We need, well, less than 5 feet to go from there on up to there. So a 5-foot little piece will do it for you, but of course we have some extra laying around, and I'll cut to size the piece I actually need. We definitely need all this stuff right here. All that stuff right there is kind of optional, might make the job a little bit easier. You'll either need a razor blade or a drywall saw, one of those two you will need. The stud finder makes life a little bit easier in some ways, and so does that needle nose pair of pliers as well. Down here what we have is a Sharpie, a simple remodel box. I'm not even sure if that's what they call those, but that's what I've been calling them for years. A little remodel, single gang box, about $1. An outlet, about $2. Faceplate, 45 cents or whatever, and a $10 pair of wire strippers, a Phillips and flathead screwdriver. Hopefully you have that laying around. And this 14-2 gauge wire, fairly cheap, 5 feet, shouldn't cost more than a few dollars, especially you could probably just borrow it from someone you know if they have a roll of this laying around. And then you have these tools over here, a simple razor blade, $10 for a good one, and a drywall saw, again, $10, $12 for that. Now let's look at what we're going to do to get started here. Okay, so first we're gonna go ahead and remove the faceplate cover here from our outlet. And then we wanna go ahead and make sure that we actually do have the power turned off. Of course, we've already turned things off at the circuit breaker, and we wanna make sure that there is no power going to this outlet here. Kind of loose and janky. And we'll go ahead and undo this top and bottom screw here. Okay, got a little bit impatient there with the screwdriver. So drill always helps. Now, what do we have coming in here? A simple hot wire, a neutral or common wire, whatever you want to call it, and then an unshielded, uninsulated ground wire. That's all normal. We checked those guys. Nothing has power, so we're all safe there. And now we're gonna have to make a decision here on doing this one of two ways. We can either go ahead and find where the stud is here in relation to our outlet. And we can see that the stud is going to be on the right-hand side here. So easiest way to do this is going to be, rather than removing this box, we do know our stud is on the right-hand side here. We can use our stud finder to move across the wall and say, yep, in fact, the stud is on the right-hand side there. We could pry this box off because there's just 2 nails holding this box to the stud. This is from the original construction of the home. We could pry this box off and slide it out. We'd have to get in there with a little bit of saw here or something like that on the right-hand side and actually cut those nails once we wiggle our screwdriver back in there to pry it apart. That makes a big mess. Takes a lot of time, and we would need another remodel box to accomplish that. Instead, I want to just use this tab here in the back to route my wire straight up through the wall, and hopefully that will save us a lot of time and a lot of headache and leave this box intact. So 2 different methods to do this. You'll see some other methods on YouTube. The method we're going to try today is just keeping this box in the wall and simply running a wire up through the wall to our new remodel box. So starting from down here, we can use the stud finder to also help us out. We already know that the stud is in fact right here on the right-hand side of this box. We're gonna be running our line up the left side of that stud, somewhere up in this general area. We can also use our stud finder to start off at the bottom here and work our way up, making sure there's no studs running across the path that we're trying to run through. If there was a stud running across the path we'd have to run through, we'd have to do some drywall cutting to actually get that wire through that stud and then on up to where we want the outlet to actually be. So luckily, it seems like it's just going to be a straight shot. This is an exterior wall, so there's likely going to be some insulation in this wall. Hopefully there's insulation in this wall. It might make it slightly more difficult to run that 14-2 wire up through this wall. It may not be quite stiff enough to handle that, but we can always use fish tape, which is something we'll show you here in just a minute, to help us do that run. The next step is going to be to trace out where our remodel box, where our single gang remodel box is actually gonna go. I'd like it to go somewhere in this area. We know our stud, we screwed into it here, so we know our stud is right along this area. We wanna put the remodel box somewhere up around here behind the TV and high enough that the cord is not gonna sag down. And also if somebody wanted to ever raise the TV up higher, that outlet would be at an appropriate height for them. So we're gonna put it somewhere right around here. We'll grab that remodel box, just simply flip them around put them on the wall where you want them. We're gonna go ahead and trace them out. Do not bother tracing out the bottom and very top tangs there. So these little tabs are gonna have to stay on the outside of the drywall. We don't want to cut the drywall that large. We want to go ahead and simply trace just on the side here, and then at the very bottom between the tabs, the top between the tabs, and along the side there. So that way, our tabs are going to stick out and actually touch the drywall that's remaining. We're gonna make our cut right along here, and we're going to have tabs that are sticking out to hold this remodel box against the drywall, because how these work is the tab holds it on the front of the drywall. This little guy, when you go to tighten them, flips up and is now behind the drywall and is going to work its way closer as you tighten that screw there to then hold this box nice and tight against the drywall. This box is never supported by a stud. It's only supported by the physical sheetrock or drywall. And these original boxes that came with the house, those are actually nailed directly into the stud. So slightly different method here. They both work. And then we'll go ahead and knock out just one of these tabs here on the backside to allow our wire to go ahead and run up inside that. You can do it with your finger, or if you don't want to get cut up or get a little marks on your finger, you can always go ahead and just simply take a screwdriver to help you out with that. Now we've got a hole to run our Romex through. Next thing we're going to do is go ahead and grab our drywall saw to cut out this shape here and gain access behind the wall. So you could use a razor blade to do this and just keep scoring the wall. It's not quite as neat of a cut usually as just using the drywall saw. You can see that this is kind of a jab saw, right? So it's a very pointy tip there that's going to jam into the drywall very easily and then allow us to make a nice clean cut. So that is the top of where we want our first cut. Remember, we're respecting that line right there and that line right down there as well. We can always make the hole bigger. It's harder to make the hole smaller once you start. Go ahead and just jam that guy in there and then work them back and forth and cut out your box. There is our drywall removed. Yes, we do have a bunch of fiberglass insulation there. It's gonna make it a little bit interesting running that piece of Romex from the bottom up to the top, but that is what we're going to try at first, just skipping the fish tape and trying to run that Romex straight up through that insulation. We'll see how far we make it, if we are able to get it to pop up here, or if we're going to have to resort back to fish tape. So our 14-2 wire, we're going to go ahead and slide him up through that little hole that we had knocked out in that box before. And we're going to try to keep feeding him up there. And hopefully if we get lucky here, we got to kind of guide him up so he doesn't get bent there, fight through all that insulation and see how high we can get him there if he will pop out the top. Little pro tip here, you can actually hold it up beforehand and put a little Sharpie mark here so you know when you've actually gone past your hole up there. If in theory this is actually guiding up the wall straight like we want it to, doesn't always work out quite that easily on your first try. But I'd say at this point, I've definitely put in enough wire to reach that hole. So let's see if when I'm pushing here, if I can feel anything moving up there. Yes, we certainly had enough wire to reach there. No, it did not make it there. It looks like it bent right around there and is probably kind of turning or going somewhere else. So what are we gonna do at this point? Grab the fish tape. The other optional tool I did not tell you guys at the beginning of the video, forgot about it, was hoping we wouldn't have to use it. It's a lot more low profile than that wire, so it's got this nice little kind of sharper tip somewhat on it. We'll see if we can guide this guy up, and hopefully the idea here is that he's just going to show up and pop up right there at the top of our box. He's a lot stiffer than that wire is. All right, so a couple of options at this point. You could take your blade and you could cut out that fiberglass insulation to make a little bit more working room for yourself, or you can just jam your hand back in there. And luckily, I can actually feel that fish tape coming up behind that fiberglass insulation. So I'm gonna go ahead and try to grab the tip of him and help him come out, and there he is. All right, so now we've got it in the bottom up through the top. Now what we're going to do is go ahead and attach our Romex to this tip here with a little bit of electrical tape, pull them through, and we're going to pull that 14-2 wire back throughout that bottom box there so we can tee in to this outlet and then get power up here where we want it. All right, so we're going to take a piece of tape and join these two together so that we can pull the wire back through the wall. Works great with just regular old electrical tape. We want to do this in a way that's kind of low profile and streamlined enough that it's not going to pull the two apart as we're tugging everything through the wall. And you might say, well, John, that's not electrical tape. What kind of tape is that? Well, it's the random tape I found in my toolbox. It's a great question. Where is my electrical tape? I would love to know where my electrical tape is. It's an amazing question, whoever was in my toolbox last. Where is my electrical tape? but instead we'll just use that. So we'll go ahead and pull this guy through. We can actually kind of help him out to start with, kind of push him through. Then we're going to go ahead and pull through the bottom as we feed through the top here. Okay, there we are. We now have our 14-2 wire pulled into that box so we can tie into this electrical outlet, and we have power running up there as well. We'll go ahead and grab our wire cutters slash strippers and start working on this wiring. All right, we're done with the fish tape. We'll go ahead and wind him up and put him away back in my toolbox where tools belong. We like to clean up as we go so that we don't lose things from my toolbox. We can use the razor blade from before to go ahead and open this guy up, just taking the outer insulation off there. We don't want to take the insulation off of the wires that are inside. We'll go ahead and pull it back there to expose all that. We can cut off what we don't need there. We'll go ahead and snip all of that right there, throw that in our garbage pile. And what we're left with is going to be a hot wire, a neutral wire, and the unshielded ground. We'll go ahead and strip this back and connect this guy into our outlet. One way you could do this is you could actually do what I'm doing right here. We're going to do that up top as well so that we can tie into that outlet up top. You could wait to connect into this just in case this went hot on you. Again, since we've been leaving this alone for the last few minutes, we're gonna go ahead and check again. Yes, everything is in fact turned off, and hopefully we'll not get electrocuted here. So now that all these are stripped back, we don't strip them back too far, we don't strip them back too little. We want to go ahead and get right about a ½ inch there of bare wire showing. We're going to put black to brass, so we can see black's already going on this side, on the right side of the outlet, on the skinny side of the outlet terminal. That's how it always works. So we want to put black in right there. We're just gonna push them right in, being kind of lazy there. And same thing over here on the right, the silver side is for white. We're gonna push him in there on the left-hand side there. And just make sure, a little tug, that's all good. We're gonna go ahead and join up our ground wire, and that is where our needle nose pliers come into play, or you could potentially get away with doing it with these guys, trying to put that nice little bend in there, a nice little hook to go ahead and join that to the ground circuit as well. All right, now everything is connected. I wanna go ahead and shove this back up inside here, but I don't wanna use too much extra wire there, so I'm gonna go ahead and pull a little bit back through here to help slide all of this back into this outlet, put a nice little bend in it, just to make sure I have enough room in that box to guide everything back in. FYI, that is neutral, that is hot. If you grab hold of one of these when it is hot, you just closed the circuit really well on 2 really good contactors, and that's gonna be really exciting for you. So make sure that the power is turned off there. We'll go ahead and pull that guy up just a little bit more there to get this guy to cooperate and line up nicely. We don't wanna be forcing things. So just with a mild amount of pressure, pushing in there, everything lines up. We definitely don't want to force it with the screws. We wanna be able to hold it in there with fingertip pressure before actually tightening things up with our screws. We'll go ahead and start our first one there. No, you do not need a drill, but the drill makes life a lot easier in finishing things off with the screwdriver so that we can go ahead and adjust, make sure that guy is nice and level and square in there. That looks pretty straight up and down. Then we'll go ahead and snug them down. If we do put our plate back on there and it is not quite level to us, we can always undo one of these guys and slide them around, or undo both to slide it around and make sure that plate gets lined up nicely on there. And we got our screw all nice and lined up there. Time to come up here and make sure we're giving ourselves enough wire to work with. Wire is cheap. It's a lot better to go ahead and cut a little bit long at this point. We can always trim it back. It's really hard to add it on. So let's go ahead and trim right about there. Should be plenty to work with. So I don't need that big roll of wire anymore. Same thing is going to happen up here. We're going to trim back the insulation to expose some wires, and then we're going to go ahead and strip the insulation off of our hot and neutral wire to connect in our new remodel box and our new outlet. Time to take the remodel box, feed all 3 wires through that hole that we had knocked out there, pull that guy in, and now we'll get those tabs pushed in there, make sure our screws are all the way pushed in, line up our box, and we can go ahead and start snugging our box in. We want to make sure that there is no fiberglass insulation that's going to restrict those tabs from flipping up. So I want to make sure that nothing is going to be binding up on those tabs or keeping them from flipping, one from flipping up and one from flipping down, to make sure that this box actually gets attached cleanly to the drywall. All right, so just by putting a few turns on the top, a few turns on the bottom, we can feel that both tabs latched. Now we're gonna go ahead and tighten them down to make this box flush and tight to the wall. Okay, so we've got top and bottom nice and tight. Our remodel box is tight in there. We've got some wires here that we have plenty of room with. We're gonna go ahead and put a little bend in there so we can fit all this in there. Nice little Z bend to start with. We've got black and white. Remember, black to brass to the narrow skinny side, that is your hot side. We're gonna go ahead and push them in there into the bottom, and white over to the shiny silver side. Push him in there. Go ahead and make a bend on this guy to connect him up to your ground wire. And so we just wrap him around just like that. Tighten up that green screw so this is a grounded circuit as it's supposed to be. And now we can go ahead and push all this stuff back into our box. We'll go ahead and kind of pre-bend these wires just to give ourselves some room to work with and make sure that this will go in with fingertip pressure to begin with. So it will, that's good, before we try to snug up these screws here. And yes, I'm going to be lazy and use the drill. Same rule applies as before. We're going to finish these up by hand so that we can move this around straight left and right to make sure that he is in fact lined up. We got that one snug down there. We'll go ahead and snug this guy up here, and that's all there is going to be to it. We'll put on our wall plate cover, and that is it, guys. We now have an outlet that has power to power your TV right behind your TV. And guess what? No more ugly wires.